Madison and the War of 1812. Again, just title this Madison, the War of 1812. Sometimes referred to as Mr. Madison's War. Right off the bat, what do you think that means? They called it Mr. Madison's War. What do you think, Evelyn?
He started it.
He started it. Do you think there's a little bit of sarcasm there or hard feelings over it? So, this is your war. What do you think, Evelyn?
Yes, I think they're putting the blame on him because he didn't like it.
Yes. And yes, Aiden, I know sometimes it is frozen, but here we go. So it doesn't hurt to remind me is what I'm saying. All right, on we go. So the election of 1807, we ended last chapter with this. Madison says, no, I'm not running again. Jefferson says, no, I'm not running again. Jefferson says, no, I'm not running again, although he could have. At that time, you could serve an unlimited number of terms. It wasn't until the 25th Amendment, 1850, that comes along later on. We'll get to that. Wrong amendment, 20th Amendment. Anyway, Jefferson says no, although he could have. He had enough. What was the problem with Jefferson's presidency? Why does he say, I'm out of here, I'm not doing this anymore? Go ahead.
People were upset with what he did because he would say something but then go against what he said.
Okay, yes, he did use implied powers when he said he wouldn't. Is it in the Constitution about purchasing land? No, so he would use implied powers. Federalists certainly wouldn't like it. They threatened to break away. Maggie, you had your hand up also.
Yeah. Oh, he did like the Embargo Act and
Yes.
that crushed the economy and then people got mad.
Yes, and caused an economic depression. Yes. Okay. So he could have run again. And if you look at the first page of your handout up at the top, what party was Madison, everybody? Democratic, Republican, or we could say Republican. And what was one of the first things he had to deal with as president? The first thing, one of the first things. Anybody get that? Go ahead.
The war, whether or not they were going to go to war.
Whether they were or not they were going to go to war. And the big thing is with Britain, yes. Tensions with Britain. Okay, so that's your answer to that question. So the War of 1812, who does the United States fight against in this War of 1812? Throwing this at you ice cold on an early Tuesday. Not really. Go ahead. Great Britain. So I guess that answers the question. Going to war with Britain. Take a wild guess what year this war starts. Sarah. 1812. Yes, 1812. And it's going to end in 1814 when they take a little trip. Yeah, 1812. That's why it's called 1812. That's not a trick question. That is not a trick question. It starts in 1812. It ends in 1814 when they took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. Don't say you don't know that song. I know you do. And we're going to hear it this chapter. Stay tuned. Okay, so a little bit about good old James Madison here. This is not on your handout. Let's take a look up at the screen here. James Madison. Of course, he was Secretary of State. 57 years young. He's from Virginia. There's that Virginia dynasty. Keeping that in mind. What does that mean when I say Virginia dynasty? What am I talking about? Go ahead. 4 of the first 5, yes. 4 of the first 5. The one that didn't was who? Adams, yes. He's from Massachusetts. So 4 of the first 5. He's a Revolutionary War veteran, most famous for writing what? I was hoping I'd have more hands in the air. In fact, I was hoping some of you would raise both hands there. Of course, if you're going to say Declaration of Independence, do not raise your hand. Abe. Try. Don't say 10 Commandments. That was somebody else.
It's the thing.
The thing.
The Virginia
Okay, we got the thing.
Whatever.
No, that was Jefferson. Maggie.
The Constitution.
Most of it, yes. And specifically?
The Bill of Rights.
The Bill of Rights. Let's make sure we know that, okay? Bill of Rights and most of the Constitution. Certainly another point about James Madison was his first lady, Dolly Madison. Not just because she was his wife, but because of the role she played. Okay, so let's take a look here on the right side there at the bottom. Jesse, please.
She was the most important woman in the political circles of America. To this day, she remains one of the best known and best loved ladies of the White House. Dolly chose the finest of fashions. She looked the queen. It would be absolutely impossible for anyone to behave with more perfect propriety.
Yep. Good. Very good. Yes, and we will definitely talk about her, and she plays a role in this chapter. Okay. James Madison, did you know? Now, we took a look at this 1 minute video, and I'll actually start class with this tomorrow. It's a 1 minute video. And that's one where they talk about his knee bridges, etc., but we're not too worried about that. Let's take a look at this. James Madison, let's take a look at the bullet points there.
Oh, no, sorry.
Does that mean you did get it, sir?
Yes, I did.
Okay, no problem. Just make sure we all got it. No problem. All right, let's take a look at the bullet points. Aiden, please.
Fourth American president, composed the first drafts of the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights and earned the nickname the Father of the Constitution. In 1792, Madison and Thomas Jefferson, 1743 to 1826, founded the Democratic Republican Party, which has been called America's first opposition political party.
Let's pause. First opposition political party. Who would they have been opposed to? Why do we say the Democratic Republicans were an opposition party? Maggie?
They went against the Federalists.
Yes, they were definitely anti-federalists, and it evolved into the Democratic Republicans. And that goes back to, of course, Jefferson. We were all Federalists, we were all Republicans, okay? And we'll go down to the last bullet point there. Go ahead, Aiden, please.
Madison served as the Secretary of State for Jefferson. Madison led the U.S. into the controversial War of 1812 to 1815 against Great Britain.
And I said 1814. 1814 was when the war pretty much ended. It wasn't until 15 that the treaty was signed. So technically it was 1815. Okay, let's go back to the handout then. And let's take a look at the second question. What were some strengths and weaknesses of Madison? Anybody get that far yet? I know that's on the AMSCO. Gracie, please.
Some of his weaknesses was public speaking, his stubborn temperament. One of his strengths was that he was a brilliant thinker.
Yes. Weak speaker, stubborn, and your other one, the last one you said, the positive?
Brilliant thinker.
Brilliant thinker, yes. Go ahead. Another one, Dad?
Me?
I thought you didn't hear that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
he was a hard worker.
Hard worker, yes. Writer, and he definitely had a lot of intellect. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look up at the screen here. Now this, actually, I don't know if you got this far on the handout, but we can go through this together. First of all, we'll flash back to the Embargo Act, which forbade all trade with foreign countries, and that's a huge disaster. Who passed the Embargo Act once again? That was Jefferson, yes. Now, the next couple questions are actually there on your handout, and I'm just going to go over them with you. The Non-Intercourse Act, which was passed in 1809, now that was actually this right here. This was actually Madison, okay? And that's on there. Everybody see where that is? Maybe you didn't get that far, okay? So the Non-Intercourse Act was trade with everyone, but as you can see there, France and England. So make sure you note it was still a disaster. So Macon's Bill number 2. See if you can paraphrase this. Look at Macon's Bill number 2. Promise to end the embargo with a country that would respect America's rights. And by no means do I want you necessarily to write it that way in your paper there. But what do you think that means? We'll end the embargo against the country that would respect our rights. I know maybe it's kind of self-explanatory, but what does that mean? What does that mean? Give me an explanation. Bryson?
The country that would like respect America and kind of like do what they said they would trade with.
Okay. I think we should also go one step further. The country that would allow us to trade freely. Make sure you put this, the country that would not impress our sailors too. We would trade with that country. And I want you to know there, France agreed, so the embargo remained against Britain. Now, before we go any further, why was that brilliant? Think about Napoleon, who's running the show over in France. Why was that brilliant on his part? Go ahead.
He now looks like a hero to America, and that's like a world trade between those two, and then they're both going against Great Britain.
Perfect. And that's exactly right. It was a brilliant move on Napoleon's part. But now here's a question for you. Think about this phrase. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Don't ever believe it. Countries, presidents, politicians have gotten into serious trouble over that. Okay? So you don't necessarily want to fall into that. In fact, I'm going to tell you this. The United States actually almost went to war against France also. We'd have had our work cut out for us. We would have had our work cut out for us. Okay? So make sure you understand there for Macon's Bill number 2, it was France. Okay? All right, let's talk about this a little bit more. This was actually referred to as Napoleon's deception. What does that mean? What does that mean if you deceive somebody? What does that mean? Go ahead.
Basically, like you trick them.
Yes. Yeah. And that's exactly what Napoleon was doing. France, led by Napoleon, stated they would not harass or seize our ships. He stated they would allow the U.S. to trade freely. However, Napoleon and the French did continue to seize U.S. ships, but France did turn the U.S. against Britain. And I want you to know that was brilliant on Napoleon's part. That was a brilliant move on his part. It worked. What he was trying to accomplish worked. And that's that next part there. What did Napoleon do, and why was it called Napoleon's deception? Because he continued to harass our ships, is what happened. Great Britain, though, only impressed our soldiers. Now, what does impressment mean, once again? Anybody remember that? Go ahead.
They steal them and use them.
Yes. Okay. So that was another concern because it stood in the way of Canada and also helped supply Native Americans. So I want you to know that. Our enemy was said to be Britain, but I want you to understand this was very controversial. Because Britain stood in the way of Canada, which the United States does not want a British Empire in Canada. Think about it. That would be like having a pack of wolves right next to your sheep. You don't want that. The United States doesn't want Britain anywhere near us. Okay? So I want you to know that the big concern was Canada, which is where some of the fighting is going to take place, and also help to supply Native Americans, which the United States had treaties with. But
How did Napoleon still get away with deception? Wouldn't the U.S. realize that he was impressing sailors?
for the most part, he did just because of that. People said, well, let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's not go to war against Britain also. And what I want you to understand is people knew this was going on. But it was one of those, let's look the other way because we don't want to fight a war with both. Now it was up to Madison. Madison would have fought with both Britain and France. He would have. He wanted this thing. Okay. Good question. All right, let's do this. Go into Canvas. I know we only have a few minutes, but there's a video there when we get to it in class. You will not finish that whole video. In fact, I don't even want you necessarily to skip forward to the minutes I told you to watch. Start at the beginning. It does a good introduction here of the chapter. Okay? So go ahead and do that for a few minutes. Watch closely the introduction. And then write down where you're at, which will be about minute 2. Okay? And then tomorrow for a bell ringer, we can start that with that.